Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the live stream. It's Tuesday, and we're back for another episode of Live with SMWS. Tonight, I'm talking about water. Water, that's right. Now, this is something I've touched on a few times before, but I really want to get back to basics of adding water to your whiskey, when you do it, why you do it, what water to use, all those questions, plus a little bit of nerdy stuff. This is going to be the first of like 3 times tonight at least that I reference that I am not a scientist. I don't have any scientific background. I don't have any scientific training. I was never even interested in science in high school. It wasn't until after high school that I became interested in science as a topic. Bailey, hashtag Bailey Funk. Is this a new hashtag? Do we need another one? We've already got Where is Bailey? Where's Bailey? Or is it Where is Bailey? Anyway, I'm here. So Aqua Vitae, surely. Yeah, look, so we're gonna touch on a few things. Good to see Rob Akers, James Caden, Ben tuning in, David. Look, all these people tuning in is great. Thank you so much for tuning in live with me tonight. SMWS. Always love going live as every night that I can. Should have gone live last night. Didn't. That's okay. Thanks, Rob. Yes, got you back. I really appreciate that. So also just on tonight, please throw your comments and questions, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook group, Facebook page, wherever you're watching this right now. Please just throw Lachlan. Good, Lachlan. You know your name. That's excellent. Just throw your comments up. I'd like to throw them up on screen, as you can see here. And so taking questions throughout the night, as always, taking comments. And sometimes it gets rowdy, but sometimes it's just a whole lot of fun. So my name is Matt Bailey. I'm sure most of you know me by now. If you don't, I'm the National Ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society here in Australia, where I get to talk about all good things whiskey and all the things going on in my office full of whiskey and all the subjects around it, which is always great to learn about this stuff and come along for a bit of a ride. Tonight is getting back to basics a little bit, talking a bit about water. Now, the reason why I say that is because I'm often asked at tastings and events, how much water, first of all, do I add water to my whiskey? There's always the first one, do I add water to my whiskey? There's a society glass with some whiskey in it and some water being dropped in. How beautiful is that? Just makes me want to have a dram. Such a beautiful sight. The golden amber, there it is. So I'm often asked, do you add water to whiskey? Should you add water to whiskey? How much do you add? How do you add it? What type of water do you use? That kind of thing. And what does it do to the whiskey? That's the one that really gets a bit in depth. Let's go through some of the basics for now. I'm going to start with my rule of thumb of when to add water to whiskey, when's appropriate, and what does it do. First of all, I've got 3 little sort of rules of thumb, if you like. I've only got 2 thumbs, but 3 rules of thumb that I think will be really quite useful. First of all, young. When I say young, I mean like sort of anything between sort of 6 and even 12, 13, 14 years old. Young ex-bourbon cask whiskey, whether it be first fill, refill, doesn't matter. Ex-bourbon cask whiskey. And remember, as we talked about last week, bourbon casks make up 90-something% of the Scotch whiskey industry and of the whiskey industry worldwide, if you were to culminate it. Bourbon casks make up most of what whiskey matures in. And young ex-bourbon barrels, anywhere between sort of 3 years to 13 years or whatever you want to go with, generally appreciate a drop of water being added. Generally appreciate water being added. So therefore, most whiskey appreciates water being added. The second rule of thumb is sherry casks, I tread carefully. So that doesn't mean I don't add water. It just means that I find that sherried whiskey or port cask whiskey or wine cask whiskey of any description, generally speaking, I just like to tread a bit more carefully when it comes to adding water. I find it might be a little bit overkill sometimes, even like 1 or 2 drops, and it kills off the whiskey sometimes, even if it's at a high proof. So the hashtags are coming in thick and strong tonight. 3 Thumb Bailey. Hashtag don't stop the music. Hashtag Bailey Funk and hashtag 3 Thumb Bailey. Try saying that after 5 drams. I haven't had to have one yet. Okay. Where is Bailey, not Melbourne? No, I'm not in Melbourne. That's right. I'm able to go outside at the moment. I'm sorry, guys. It's true. I'm living in Sydney. So there you go. Not in Melbourne. So, okay. So ex-bourbon cask whiskies appreciate a few drops of water often. Even ex-bourbon at lower proof can still appreciate a drop of water. Second thing is sherry casks, wine casks, fortified casks, tread carefully. So it means you can add water to them, but I would add less than you would an ex-bourbon barrel. And then my third rule of thumb is old whiskey, and I mean whiskey that might be 18, 20, 25 years of age or more, almost never. However, there's always exceptions to the rule. There you might find a lovely 5-year-old ex-bourbon barrel that is just super integrated, doesn't need any water. And then you'll find really old whiskeys that need quite a bit of water added. There's no one way is right more than the other. But I want to talk about how to do it first of all. Let's have a look at some of the tools here on the desk. Take some of these comments. Water or ice /with bourbon every time. Yeah, okay. Well, exactly. However, well, that's entirely your call. It's all very personal preference. Hope you can hear me okay. Actually, I've got the mic set up a little bit differently. Okay. The first one I'm going to talk about is the pipette. I have a pipette here. I'm going to take it out of its little case. A pipette is one of the most famous ways of adding water in a very technical way. It's a bit nerdy. So I'm going to pour a 55.61, the Ambassador of Lavender. Great bottling. This is a refill ex-bourbon hogshead, bourbon cask. 11-year-old, young-ish, but over 10 years old. I'm just going to pour just a little bit of that, just a smidge, and just a smidge. How good is that phrase? Just a smidge, please. A dram, just a nobbler. Oh, nobbler. That's a word that needs to come back, isn't it? Nick, I'm really glad you put the /S at the end of that comment. As for sarcasm, I know you're being sarcastic. Do you need to add water from the distillery the whiskey was made? No, you don't. And you don't even need to add water that's from Scotland. You don't need to add. You know what works really well in Australia? Tap water works surprisingly well. We have very good tap water. Sorry, Adelaide. Not Adelaide. But we have very good tap water everywhere else in the country. I'd argue that Perth tap water is some of the best. So here we go. Yes, tap water tastes different in different cities. I'm sure you knew that. So pipette is one way of doing it. Now, when I'm nosing appreciating whiskey, I always like to nose it. Actually, it smells lovely, actually. Very lavendery, lovely. Very floral. Oily and viscous on the nose, even. So I've got a glass pipette here. It's a nice, elegant glass pipette. You can use a plastic pipette. You can use a glass one. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like pipettes very much. Not for home dramming. For assessment of whiskey, sure. If you really want to nerd out and dig a bit deeper into one of the whiskeys, then trying it with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different drops of water, that's one way of doing it. However, there's ways around that, and I find they're a bit. It feels like I'm in a science class when using them. So in this case, I'll just do something like I'd go 1, 2, 3. See if it changes on the nose, even just with 3 drops of water. Now, the opening proof we're starting with this bottling, for instance, is 56.9%. Mid-50s. I personally love the mid-50s. I love that sort of whiskey in that sort of like 52 to 58% for me is like that lovely sweet spot for a lot of whiskeys. They have that really sort of like rounded cask strength, very approachable, very like really lovely integration. I can say the same about a younger spirit. I can say the same about older spirit. I can say the same about higher proof and lower proof spirit, but just that whole sort of that lovely integration. So we're talking about water. We've talked about what kind of water to add and how to use it. You can use a pipette, or, which I've done here, or you can use a water jug. So the water jug also works really well. And Darren says we use plastic pipettes not because we are nerds, but to make sure we don't accidentally overpour. Look, exactly. And if you're pouring quite a valuable dram, if you're pouring a society single cask, if you're pouring some nice whiskey, you can't take water out again. You can very easily destroy whiskey with too much water, but you can't take it out again. So tread carefully with the water, and or just chuck your glass on under the running faucet. Yeah. No, yeah, not in Adelaide. Yeah, sorry, Adelaide. By the way, I've got a lot of friends in Adelaide, and I love South Australia. It's just that your tap water is terrible. It tastes like hard granite. I've been using a syringe for adding water. Yeah, easy to be precise if you want, and great for quickly cleaning a glass. Yeah, true. I mean, I use a water jug for quick rinse. I use a pipette sometimes if I'm doing critical assessment of a whiskey. So I'd add a few drops. I've added 5 now to this one. Even fruitier now. See some of the fruits instead of floral notes coming out. So instead of like an initial bunch of lavender mixed in with some roses, I've now got some papaya. Yeah, it changes the aroma of the whiskey. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go as well. Scotch Down Under says bottle with a dropper works well. There you go. So like a bottle dropper, that's right. Those little, I don't have one here actually, but it's a lot of bars use them. They're sort of like brown or clear glass bottles. Archie Rose uses these ones where it's like a little glass pipette inside a bottle, so it's nice and tidy. Can we measure the amount of Coke we add to whiskey? You can measure whatever you like you add to whiskey. If it's your bottle, you do what you like with it. If I'm serving you a dram, maybe don't add Coke to it. I'd appreciate that. I'm from Adelaide and stand behind your comments. I love so many things about Adelaide, but you've got to drink bottled water when you're over there. Sorry. That's the thing, isn't it? Like tap water tastes different all around the world. And I think Australian tap water is remarkably good. Let's be honest. We live in a country where the tap water here is bloody good. But Adelaide, yeah, your tap water does taste like a hard granite. I always think of it as very limey, very granity. So, yeah, each to their own, I guess. If you grow up with it, then that's what you're used to. But until you try that Sydney water or Melbourne water, yes. Adelaide rocks, but yes, our water sucks. I'm not the only one that thinks that. Adelaide, the only state in which the water has tasting notes. I'm putting that up, James. That's an amazing comment, and it does. The water does have tasting notes. So the other way of adding water, and I'm going to add too much to this dram, obviously, because I'm doing it for presentation purposes, is to use a water jug. Now, I'll show you how much I'd normally add here. In fact, I'm going to even kill off that other screen for a second so you can see it in full. Nope, other way around. So I'd grab a jug and I'd just go just a dash like that. You don't need much. You just need enough to open it right up. And when I say open up, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I want to nerd out on here for a second before I go too far down my path here. So what happens to whiskey when you add water? So I've got a whiskey glass here that it looks like a typical Glencairn. I decided to use that photo because it was what I had on hand. So what we have here is sorry, what's going on there? Sorry. So how that's okay. So let's break up what's happening here. So through some scientific research, there was some simulations done where the molecules were interacting at different concentration points with the guaiacol, which is the molecule that is common in single malt whiskey, single malt Scotch whiskey. So it's guaiacol. I'm going to say it wrong. Remember, I do not have a science background. Guaiacol is an agent that is thought to have disinfectant properties and used as an expectorant. So it's phenolic. It's a phenolic natural product. It is first isolated from guaiac resin and oxidization of lignin. Who here was tuning in last night when I talked about lignin too much? So that was fun. So guaiacol is also present in wood smoke as well as lignin. So lignin is of course a class of complex or organic polymers that form key structural materials in support tissues of vascular plants, of algae, of wood, and it's especially important in the formation of cells in wood that form in wood and bark because they also lend part of the rigidity that we talked about, and it doesn't rot. So it does, but it's very hard to rot. So by adding water, just talking about that sciencey stuff for a moment, adding that water means that the aromas, instead of sitting on the surface of the spirit, and I'm going to show you what I mean here. Instead of sitting on that, like when you first pour it, the aromas are going to sit quite the aromas of the guaiacol and whatnot are going on are going to sit right here. They're going to sit right on the top of the spirit surface. So sitting on that top of the spirit surface means that it's going to take a lot of moving it around, or it's just going to, or you're going to miss out on some of those aromas that are trapped within the spirit and beneath. So by adding that water, we're allowing. Do you like my drawing, by the way? Do you like my drawing? Come on, look at that. That is top artwork right here. So that drawing there is, that's something I did earlier. I could have done it live, actually. I should do these drawings live just so you can see how bad of a drawer I am. Yeah, another great comment from Scotch Down Under says, can use a straw like a makeshift dropper or pipette. Yes, that's true. So you can use a straw. You can use a teaspoon's also quite good. If you don't have a dropper, if you don't have anything, you can use a teaspoon. Just a teaspoon in a glass of water, pop some water in. To methoxyphenol, if that's easier. Thank you, Robert. That is a much easier word to say, obviously. Guaiacol. Guaiacol. Thank you, guaiacol. Not guaiacol, guaiacol. So thank you. I knew there was going to be a scientist in here. Thank you so much. That's a better diagram than some papers. Well, hey, who said Photoshop was a waste of money? Look at that. Come on. So there you go. And that's where I wanted to sort of, and there you go. That's the simplicity of guaiacol. I'll show you that image there. There's the compound for those who want to see it. I expect to see SMWS lab coats for sale in the next outturn. Some of the things we talk about lately have been a little bit lab coaty, haven't they? I do like sometimes just digging into some of the more sciencey, I'm not talking crazy science. I'm talking like surface level sort of, where do those flavors come from, and what's the role of things like lignin and guaiacol and things like that. So by adding water, scientists have found that adding that water, if you like, disturbs the guaiacol and actually opens up the ethanol, the aromas from within the spirit. So it's worth mentioning at this point that water and alcohol don't uniformly mix together. As two compounds, they don't uniformly mix together very well. But so guaiacol tends to bind to alcohol, and both kinds of molecules are partially repelled by water. So there's a lot going on there, but it's exciting to see that there's scientific proof that adding water to your whiskey can improve it. Not always, but can. And that's why sometimes we've added water to whiskeys. I'm sure you have, I have, and you go, damn, that was so much better before I added water. And even in the tastings that you've seen with Andrew and I hosting, you've seen us do that. You've seen us add water and go, that's the reduced nose that we call it, or reduced, as we say, like reduced with water. And it was better before I added water. Don't add water, then we shout, don't add water. Maybe you don't want to. So at spirits that are cask strength, like what we do at the society, are at higher alcohol concentration. So the molecules associated with taste and spread, the molecules associated with taste, will spread throughout the glass. So this is one of the benefits of cask strength whiskey. The molecules will spread far more sort of volatilely. Is that a word? Anyway, around the concentration of the ethanol and the in between the interface of the liquid and the air above the glass. So if by filling up that space and adding some water, you actually break through some of those compounds and it opens up all the aromas. You're extending the life of your bottle as well, which is also very exciting because you're getting more dram per buck. And if those taste compounds are right on the surface, they're in lower concentration, but you'll notice it more or less on the tongue. So that's sometimes when you taste a whiskey the first time and you get that, I won't say nose prickle. We're talking on the palate here for a second. You get that sort of like palate prickle almost. It's like, oh, and then you taste it again with a few drops of water and everything starts making sense. So this also, like, I also want to show you the difference here between guaiacol and lignin and how complex the difference is here. There's our rather simplistic looking guide for guaiacol, and here's lignin. There you go. So the complexities of oak, the complexities of flavor that broken down with water are quite immense. Just again, we've gone from guaiacol to lignin. It's massive. And other molecules will do the opposite. Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, Rob, I've got to get you on this. We've got to talk about this and do it live together. So the question from Andrew Newen here asks, how much water should you add? Now that's the eternal question, isn't it? How much water should you add to your whiskey? Now, when I've poured a nice dram, and let's say you've poured about 30 mils, it looks like I've done there. If I'm adding water, I always tread carefully. Now I'll try and do I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4-ish drops or so of water. Start by looking at the proof of what the proof of the spirit is you're drinking, Andrew, because in this case at 56.9, I know my palate fairly well, and I know that at 56.9, it's not going to blow my face off. I'm holding here a bottle of Fortress of Darkness with a bit of a grubby label. This bottle's had a bit of love. 107.10. It's an 8-year-old whiskey, a sherried whiskey. 65.4%. So that's really up there. I'd be more tempted to add water to this, but this is the thing. This one's a sherried whiskey. So I'd be tempted to add less water because of sherry, but more because it's 65.4%. You'll find the sweet spot, Andrew. If you prefer it at natural cask strength, if you don't feel like you need to add water, don't add water. No one's telling you have to. It's just saying that scientifically, adding it will often open it up, and I say often, and let all those aromas erupt from the surface, the glycols, all the way up to the top of the glass, where all the action is here rather than being trapped in there. So another question coming through is whiskey in a glass either opens up or oxidizes with time. Does adding water affect this? Ooh, that's a very good question. I mean, it will oxidize very fast in a glass, of course, rather than being a sealed bottle. Water won't affect oxidization per se, I don't think. But I need to get back to you on that question. That's a really good one. When I say you, I say a Facebook user, because you've got to sign in to not sign in. You've got to give StreamYard permission for me to be able to see your name on here, and I can't go through every comment. The problem with that study is they really focused on the glycol and not really the many other compounds, but alas, it was an interesting study. I'm glad you know the study, Scotch Downer. You are very well researched. It is true, though, that the problem with this study is that it was mostly focused on the glycol, and I fully respect that. But tonight, I just want to be sort of a fairly sort of broad overview of when and how to add water to whiskey, rather than just the scientific studies of such. Was there a cask called Fortress of Solitude, or I dream it? Robert, I think you're at that point now in your society journey where you're dreaming society cask names. It's okay. I've been there for a long time. It's so a Fortress of Darkness, that one was called, not a Fortress of Guaracol or a Fortress of Solitude. Sorry. But I hope that answers some of your questions. So which water source do you use? Use tap water. If you really want to be quite picky about it, use filtered water. I'm not overly picky about that kind of stuff. Whereas filtered water is quite good for assessment, and whereas for enjoyment, tap water is probably mostly fine unless you live in Adelaide. And then how much to add? I always start with a few drops, but sometimes I do a generous dash if I know what kind of whiskey I'm getting myself into. A generous dash, bring it right down. You get a lot of enjoyment out of a lower proof, but with all the intensity of being a cask strength whiskey that's had water added, rather than one that's been watered down to 40% for tax reasons, not taste. Remember that one. And I think that answers just about all the questions that have been coming in. But that's really my 20 minutes. Add water as you go. Young whiskeys, almost always. Sherried whiskeys, only sometimes. Old whiskeys, very rarely. But I never say no to adding water to any of those categories. So, question from Andrew Newen: does the water have to come from the top, or can you add water first and then the whiskey? Ooh, that's actually a really good question. You know what? Let's try that. Okay. I don't know what this is going to do, but I'm going to try it with the sherried whiskey. I normally wouldn't add water to this, but I almost made my own mistake. I'm going to add water first. Andrew, I'm going to go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So just by the way, that's what 10 drops of water looks like. Can you even see that? It's barely anything. So I'm going to go one better. I'm going to go just the kind of dash I'd do for a 65% whiskey. There we go, just a dash, and then I'm going to add the whiskey. You're seeing this happen live. Maybe this works. So I've poured the whiskey into the glass that already had a bit of water in it. I don't see why it doesn't work. You can do whatever you like then. You can actually measure out the water much easier, and you could add more whiskey to it. There you go, rather than trying to take water out. As you said, add a little at a time, and you can't take it back out. That's right. Take your time with adding water, no matter how you do it, because you can't take it back out again. Great question. This is one I should have addressed. Do you think that room temperature water is best versus hot or cold? Never add ice cold water to it. I think it does that same thing that it does when you add ice to whiskey. It actually contracts all the compounds, all those flavors that you're trying to get out, and clamps them all up so you can't actually taste anything except cold whiskey. Look what happens with beer. Use beer as an example. Do you remember that era? Is anyone old enough to remember that era of beer marketing in the 90s where it was all about the coldest beer, the ice cold, the super cold, like the cold dry, and like the best beer is the coldest beer. The best beer, if the beer is really cold, you can't taste the beer. It just tastes like really cold, fizzy, boozy water. You don't actually get the flavor of the malt, the flavor of the beer. It was a really great way for them for the beer industry to hide very average beer in behind some marketing. However, no, Nick, I reckon the best option is literally just room temperature. Whatever the room temperature is. If it's cold, it's a little bit cold. If it's warm, it's a little bit warm. But generally, avoid warm water. Of course, you don't want to add warm water to your whiskey. You don't want to add ice cold water to your whiskey. Certainly not boiling water. I don't know what that would even do to a whiskey. I don't want to find out. But science with Bailey. What are that, like the 5th or 6th different hashtags tonight? They're coming out thick and fast. Ice cold beer is best beer. Ooh, yeah. Some beer is it's better if you don't taste it. You're not wrong. Really good comment here from Darren. Also under 9 degrees Celsius, taste buds start to lose their ability to sense 100% flavor. Hence, chilled whiskey will result in a reduction of sensed flavors. I can understand, depending on where you live in the world and what day of the year it is, popping your whiskey in the fridge for maybe popping your bottle of whiskey in the fridge for 20 minutes before you pour it, probably not the worst idea. If you live in Darwin, if you live somewhere like that and it's summer and you enjoy a dram, I wouldn't begrudge you for doing that. That's, of course, a cool idea. A great example of that is Burnley's Hells. Let it warm a little out of the fridge before drinking. It roars into life 10 minutes in. They could say that about a lot of really good beers. Is it Cal? Is that you behind those comments? I can't see. It just says Facebook. There you go. Now we're on to the segment of leaked drams question. If we order the Whiskey and Ailment 10th anniversary bottle, or do we all get the red scarf? The answer is yes. So the red scarf is available to anyone who grabs a bottle of the 72.89 from Whiskey and Ailment and from us. I think we'll have a few more, but I can send Whiskey and Ailment some spares, as they've sent all theirs out with the packs. So the red scarf, it's a custom scarf with it's been designed and manufactured in Sydney. And it's a lovely piece of anyway, I think it's lovely. It's got the Whiskey and Ailment and Society logos throughout, like a pattern, and then sort of hallmarks to the flavor of that particular cask. The scarf is exclusive to cask 72.89, which goes on sale soon. So keep an eye out. But the pack tasting is next week. Speaking of next week, it would be remiss of me not to mention next week is the week where we're doing all of our big gathering events, including, of course, the gathering pack. I still think there's a few left online. So if you want to jump on and grab one, you'd get it in time still now if you ordered it now for next week's tasting. There's a 16, 6, 8, 24, and 10, I think, year old whiskey in there. All 5 different remarkable gathering single casks. Based on member feedback, the lids have been upgraded slightly for the worldwide packs. These ones here, they're a little bit different from our local packs, which are the ones with the nice hay and the glass bottles. But gathering is next week. Really looking forward to all the events coming up: Hobart, Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, and of course our big online tasting. Lots coming up there. Unfortunately, no in-person events still scheduled at all for Victoria. We are keeping our love for you guys up always. It's just It's really awful to see, but I'm going to stay positive and we're going to get through this and we're going to, and I'm looking forward to being back down. I'm looking forward to being back at Whiskey and Almond, opening that first can of Kaiju Crush before too long. So that's, and you know what? I want to make mention of these live tastings that we're doing, including next week's, which is super exciting. I've got Wednesday night with the Whiskey and Almond team, and then we've got Saturday night with Andrew and I presenting the Gathering tasting box. I do a little prize giveaway for the person who actually creates the best looking setup photo of them enjoying their drams. You know what? If I have to give the prize to Darren Howie again, I will. Don't tempt me. This guy is a master of. He's got the palm trees. He's got the perfect weather. He's got the pack, the scarves, everything going on here. So if I have to give the prize again to him, try and prove me wrong. Do a better photo or show us your setup at home. It's always very cool. And of course, hashtag altogether SMWS is the hashtag for it, and hashtag the Gathering 2020. Really looking forward to next week. That's adding water to whiskey. I might expand a bit on this on another stream because this is really exciting and it's a good way to see how to enjoy whiskey, how to get the most out of it. Adding a few drops here and there can really open things right up, and we can all have a lot of fun and enjoy whiskey to the fullest, especially great single casks from the SMWS. Until next time, tomorrow night we have Robbie Tucknott from Barrel Brokers Victoria joining us on Roundtable. Roundtable returns. It's our collab SMWS Oak Barrel live stream, which is Andy Milne, Alex Darlenberg, Scott Fitzsimons, and myself, always with a special, not always, sometimes with a special guest, and Robbie Tucknott is on for tomorrow night. Thank you so much for coming along with me tonight, and I will see you all tomorrow night for Roundtable. Otherwise, have a great week if I don't see you then, and stay safe, as always. Happy dramming, and looking forward to next week's events. Cheers, everyone.